Good morning, Bill.
Good morning, Bill. It's good to be back.
Folks who may not have been watching the DMZ before it was the DMZ, back when it was the Weekend Blog, Bill Beutler was one of our go-to substitutes. Has been on a long time, but our good friend Matt Lewis is taking a little break this week. Why don't you tell folks a little bit about yourself for those who may not remember and may want to know what you've been up to?
Certainly. No, I've been on Blogging Heads much more recently than I was on the old Weekend Blog over the last couple of years. Regular viewers may be familiar with a series of shows I've done interviewing people on technology and tech policy issues. But the last few years, I founded a creative agency, which is called Beutler Inc. And we do visual design for content marketing. Longtime viewers may know that Wikipedia is a particular focus for us. But all of this, keeps me focused. I live in Washington. I'm in DMZ South, just like Mr. Lewis is. And so I try to stay as plugged into to politics and the political scene and the news media as much as I can, partly just because I'm a news junkie. So I keep track of it.
Excellent. Well, it's great to have you back on with us.
Thanks.
Now, the last time I talked to Matt, forgive me because I'm pulling up a quote on my phone, we talked a little bit about Scott Walker, whether Scott Walker was going to have a problem because he lacked a college degree. And I mentioned that there was a question whether he really was a swing state pick, even though he's from, his whole shtick is that he's a conservative, but he won in a blue state. That means he would be a good national candidate. I was questioning that because he has always run a path of, just juicing the base, because Wisconsin's a very polarized state. He's never had to run in a presidential year where the demographics of the turnout were different. Does that really indicate how he would play nationally? Now, since we talked, Giuliani made those comments at an event of his, and interesting that it was an event that was ostensibly a private event that was organized by I'm going to pronounce his last name wrong, John Castimedes, who was a big Clinton donor, but is actually really conservative and ran for mayor of New York as a Republican, and he showed up to Jeb Bush's six-figure fundraiser the other day. He organized this Scott Walker event, which is with a pretty elite group of conservative muckety mucks.
It's one of these events that's supposed to be off the record, but of course, there's always a journalist or two who misses that note, and so then we find out about it.
Right. I don't really get what the ground rules were there, but obviously, people thought this was a private event, didn't realize there was press in the room.
Nothing's really private any longer. You would think, especially after Romney and his, I forget what percent it was, 47%, that, people would be a little bit more on guard. But apparently not.
Right. I mean, people should always know that even if it's totally private, someone could always have a camera phone. You never know what's going to happen.
Yep.
And Giuliani wasn't on the initial invite list, but Castimedes apparently just threw away very fully, hey, why don't you come down? And then all of a sudden he's on the microphone. He's talking smack about Obama. So Walker was then asked about that because Walker didn't say anything at the event itself to admonish Giuliani. And when he was asked directly about does Obama love his country, he said, I've never asked the president, so I really don't know what his opinions are on that one way or the other. And then separately, he was asked about is Obama a Christian. He goes, I don't know. I've never actually talked about it, or I haven't read about that. I've never asked him about that. And our good friend Matt Lewis had a piece that really took Walker to task for a bad answer, and because a lot of conservatives are saying this is a cheap shot question, and Marco Rubio has said the Democrats don't get asked when Joe Biden does dumb stuff. Why do we all have to answer for Rudy now? And Matt was saying, look, that's all true, but you're in the big leagues now and you get asked these things and you have to have good answers for them. So does this suggest that Scott Walker really isn't ready for prime time, although his stock is rising? He just was leading pretty handily in the last Iowa poll.
Right.
Are conservatives pausing and saying maybe Scott Walker needs some seasoning here, or is this being treated as a typical Scott Walker versus the liberal media, and I'm going to stand with Scott Walker?
I suppose we have to look and see what the next round of polling says, but I would I'm not a betting man, but if I was, I would say that this is not going to create a blip on his support from the base. Certainly, or in general, I mean, which the base is a big part of the Republican electorate. I agree with Matt that it was not artfully handled. I also agree with the complaints from the right more broadly that this is not a useful line of questioning. It's gotcha because any answer that comes out of it is going to be upsetting to someone, and it's also trivial too. It really doesn't matter what has no bearing on policy whatsoever. And I mean, there are other things that Scott Walker has had a difficult time answering that are more substantive than this. There's an article by Betsy Woodruff, another blogging head, in Slate this week about how Scott Walker can't give a straight answer about, so to speak, what he thinks about gay marriage. I mean, he's against it, but he's trying to downplay his past opposition to it. Kind of recognizing, I think wisely, that it is not a smart issue to fight on. Same thing. I think he really did mean to sidestep this question about Obama's patriotism and religion, but he chose the wrong words I don't think it's a big deal. I think he needs to learn from it if he's going to be a credible contender. And I think he's going to be. So, if for him, maybe it's a good thing that he caught this flack early on because he can adjust before it becomes more serious.
Well, I think it's a great argument for getting in the race early. I mean, I think Rick Perry in 2012, early 2011, late 2011, and Wesley Clark in the 2004 race. They all kind of bided their time, waited till there was some level of dissatisfaction with the field, and thought they would sort of jump in and make the grand late entrance. And you get a lot of buzz and a lot of hype on the day you jump in when you do that. But then all of a sudden, every utterance you get is hyper-scrutinized, and your early mistakes aren't treated as kindly. So Scott Walker, I think, might benefit from getting this out of the way now, right, so long as he improves and actually learns from it, and it doesn't become a pattern of behavior. But my question for you is, what do you think the mentality of the Republican primary voter is right now? And Matt and I've discussed this before, but does the average primary voter now just want someone who is going to be the purest reflection of the conservative id, and therefore, poking Obama in this way has zero repercussion if they or as a outright positive,
right? Or
is there a desire? Is there some scars from the past few elections where even the primary voters are saying, look, I want a nominee. Look, I want someone who's conservative. I don't say I want a Jeb Bush, but I need someone who's going to be savvy with the national media and is not going to get chewed up the way Sarah Palin did. So when I see a misstep like that, it makes me nervous. Do you get a sense of what the general feeling amongst base voters are?
Although I live in Washington, D.C., so to say that I have my ear to the ground in the heartland of America would be wrong. I'll tell you what I see from my own observations, reading and talking to people. Like I think that it would be a fallacy to say that there is one type or that there is a real center to what the average primary voter is thinking right now. I would say more likely it is an average of two ends of the spectrum. One end would be the more conservative base. The other end would be the more, country club, cosmopolitan Republican, which is probably more the end that I land on. And I would say that, so Jeb Bush speaks to the more moderate, establishment end of the spectrum, and say, I don't know, you could say that, Ben Carson is doing very well, or a lot more well than one would expect with the base. I believe he is number 2 in that Iowa poll. But clearly Walker has the lead. he leads by far with the conservative base. He does quite well with the others as well. I mean, I think Scott Walker's in a pretty good position to begin with here. I think you take the average of the two, and you can see why Scott Walker is in the lead. The moderates, or the establishment, really would like to see Jeb Bush the nominee because they're comfortable with him, because they know what he generally is about. But I think unless Scott Walker stumbles, he can make them comfortable with him. I don't see the base ever cottoning to Jeb Bush. I mean, look what happened with Romney the last time around. He never really truly won everybody over, and his weakness with them would have been a liability if he was even elected. So all signs point to Walker at the moment. I think he's going to be the compromise candidate, and I realize I'm saying that so far out, but things look good for him.
Well, do you think that, I mean, obviously we can't overpredict and we don't know who's going to make mistakes and all that
True.
sort of thing. But, we've talked in the past how you have kind of an establishment bracket and a Tea Party bracket.
Right.
And typically the establishment consolidates around one candidate and the Tea Party folks kind of split among several, fringe candidates. Or maybe they split between a candidate might be kind of plausible, like a Rick Perry in 2012, and then that gets chopped up between a Michelle Bachmann, a Herman Cain, Newt Gingrich, Rick Santorum, and then they can't muster enough unity to stop a Mitt Romney.
I can see where you're going here.
Stop a John McCain.
Right, that's clearly not happening right now.
So that's my question to you. Yeah. Do you think are we on track for a mano between Jeb Bush and Scott Walker, where you have one establishment candidate, you got one conservative-based candidate, and they fight it out for the heart and soul of the party? Or do neither one of them really have a firm hold on their respective camps? Lindsey Graham takes a chunk out of Jeb, and or Huckabee or Carson take a chunk out of Walker, and it still is a more of a chaotic process.
Yeah, thinking back to the previous cycle where you had, pretty much everybody on the further right end of the spectrum had a moment. Gingrich had a moment. Bachmann had a moment. I think everybody had a moment except for Rick Santorum, basically. And
he won Iowa.
Oh yeah. Right? Well, okay. There you go. This is. See,
what if he was down late?
You see how short that moment was? I've already forgotten it. Yes. Yeah. Everybody had a moment there. So I would think, to go back to your last question a little bit, to maybe answer more specifically, I do think what you're seeing is, if not more pragmatism from the base, you are seeing them more quickly coalesce around somebody who there was no Scott Walker last time. There was nobody who spoke well to the base and who, had these bona fides of being a blue state governor. And granted, I take your point that, he's not somebody who appealed to the broad center of Wisconsin in order to win, but he kind of he played to he maximized his vote among his faithful. That said, I think that it is going to be most likely Jeb versus Walker. I am having a hard.
And you think in that circumstance Walker has the edge?
I do think
the base vote is strong enough.
As I said before, I could see the establishment acquiescing to Walker. And I don't think the establishment dislikes Walker. I think they just like Jeb, and, they do like him. I think he's a good governor. And I think the immigration is a key issue in which this is a breaking point, where the establishment Wall Street Journal mentality is, this immigration argument is overblown. They're already here. Let's just go ahead and take care of this issue. Reagan did it back in the 80s. Let's just do this now, and then we'll do a better job in the future. And the base won't have any of it. And so, unless Walker is going to challenge them on that, he walks in with an advantage over Jeb. On that pretty big issue, don't forget that, no less a conservative Republican hero than George W. Bush his presidency ran onto the rocks in part when he was trying to get his immigration compromise through. And the base wasn't having any of it. No reason they think they would let Jeb do that. So, yeah, at least as things stand this far out, it does look like Walker has an advantage.
Now, I assume I think Walker's already hinted at this as a strategy. Not only would he try to play up his relatively humble upbringings as a point of contrast with Jeb, but also with a point of contrast with Hillary. Mm-hmm. And I think Chuck Todd tweeted today that noting that Democrats may be recruiting Ted Strickland to run in Ohio for Senate. Russ Feingold might do a comeback in Wisconsin. Joe Sestak might take another stab at Pennsylvania.
The comeback kids.
Right. I think this point is more saying to the first two than Sestak. Right. But he was saying these are all strong candidates individually, but Hillary, Feingold, Strickland. Does this make Democrats look like the party of the past? And Walker is going to be out there saying, "I'm the fresh face. I'm the next generation. We don't need to try the failed policies of the past." Blah blah blah. Do you think that is a potential vulnerability for Democrats, or would Hillary have the trump card saying, "Look, I might have a long resume here, but it's a strong resume. The last two Democratic presidents did a much better job in the economy than the last two Republican presidents did, and you're not offering anything different. So, who has the ideas of the past?"
Interesting. So, first of all, I wouldn't overplay how much Feingold or Strickland returning to the Senate race in their respective states would matter all that much, let alone Joe Sestak. I dimly recall that he was not very well liked, even among Democrats. So, and he has no national profile, so I wouldn't be too concerned about that. I do think there was something to be said, however, for the general point here. And it reminds me of this column written by John Rauch at National Journal, 10 years ago. But it was the argument, and this was around the time of the Kerry candidacy. His argument for why John Kerry was unlikely to become the next president was a reading of past results to show that nobody has won the presidency after they have gotten to the national level of politics and stuck around for, I want to say it's, 8 years or 2 presidential cycles, something along those lines. There's a sell-by date on politicians. And so this certainly augurs it, well for Scott Walker, who would be a fresh face by this accounting. And it would speak against the chances of Hillary Clinton, who first arrived on the national scene in 1992. I'm always wary of making arguments about what will happen in the future based on what happened in the past. But I think that there is some logic to this, that if you are looking for the future, Scott Walker, at least on the superficial level of, being a new person, not being, his brand isn't well established among the nation, so that's an advantage for him in that way. I'd say that. I do think that there are other issues too, but let's leave it there for the moment.
If any candidate has done the least amount of innovating, I think policy-wise, it's probably Scott Walker. I mean, this guy is right out of Reagan Central. I mean, Marco Rubio. I mean, I don't agree with everything that he's doing, of course, but Rubio is really putting in a lot of spade work to say, here are some policy ideas that are not just off the shelf from 1984 that apply to the problems of today, and let's have a debate about what the future of our country needs. And
Rubio is an avowed hip hop fan too, so he's got that going for him. With the kids.
He's also personally young. He speaks a little more youthfully. Yeah. But I think and I'm not saying I think Rubio is on the cusp of becoming the nominee by any stretch. I think he's got a lot of other baggage to worry about. Right. But I do think he at least has partially realized that the Republican Party has to offer something new. I don't think any of them have done what I think is the hard, necessary thing, is reckon with the Bush failure. Say, look, I know we tried top-end tax cuts and deregulation, and it didn't work.
Right.
Now, it doesn't mean that I got to become a Democrat now, but it does mean I have to go beyond just the most simplistic iteration of conservatism to convince you that a general direction of lower taxes and lighter regulation is the way to go. There's got to be some different mix of it or spin on it or wrinkle in it to say it's not going to be what didn't work before. And I see no appetite in Scott Walker to even think that way. That might be fine in the primary. I think it'd be very hard in the general.
I think Scott Walker just happens to be maybe demographically in the right place, where he has his appeal to the, say, old guard of the base is quite obvious. His relative youth and the fact that he's new to the scene, I think, means that folks who are on the, say, more the center right and the establishment may be able to hope that he will become someone that can help move the party forward. Look, this is still a party that, loves the hell out of Ronald Reagan. And, if they could go back to it, they would, but that's not happening. And so they'll do the next best thing. And Scott Walker seems to be the person who offers the most to the most number of factions of the base. This is actually an odd segue, but I do want to get back to, so Walker, he did make this gaffe, and the media pounced on it over the weekend. And so, on Monday, the stories were all about Walker and his definitely poor answer on the question of Obama's patriotism and religion. I'd like to ask you, though, why do you, so I want to get back, I want to get this to, as I think you're expecting, the Clinton Foundation. There's some stories as well that have been up in the last week about the donations coming into the Clinton Foundation, some of the oversight, or should I say minimal oversight, that the Obama administration exercised on donations to the Clinton Foundation from overseas businesses and individuals when Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State. This all seems like it should be a bigger story. I'm curious, do you think this is really going to be a problem for her? And if not, why?
Well, I think why it might not is, so far, you don't have a smoking gun that speaks to any kind of ill motive. Mm-hmm. Do you have a case where a foreign country gave money to the Clinton Foundation so they could get something untoward, mm-hmm. and the Clintons were in on the scam? Mm-hmm. I think for that thing to really blow up, you need that ingredient. Right now, the Clinton Foundation can say, "Look, we're a charity. We help people around the world in need, mm-hmm. and the money that we get from a foreign government, doesn't go in our pockets. It goes to people in need. Mm-hmm. So what's the crime here?"
Do you think it'll be it'll be ineffective for Republicans to keep mentioning this, to insinuate that there is something here without there being?
Well, not necessarily. I think that I think Hillary's got the upper hand in this race in general. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You got to do something to try to knock her down a peg. They ran an ad. Karl Rove's American Crossroads ran an ad this week that laid out all the most sensational version of events as we know it in the text on the screen, but the audio was all Elizabeth Warren. And you're talking about special interests trying to capture our government and the powerful over the people and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. Now, I believe the audio of the speech they took from was her talking about an amendment to overturn Citizens United. She wasn't talking about undue influence from foreign governments. She was talking about corporate special interest and domestically.
Clever, very clever.
There is a risk that you can use that kind of general attitude of the Democratic Party that Warren represents, and paint Hillary Clinton as a kind of hypocrite. And where I think that might, I don't fault the Republicans for trying it and seeing where they can get an angle in, mm-hmm. Find an opening. I do think there is a potential risk in using Warren in this way. Obviously, it pays off in the short run. It helps generate press and attention, and you get a shot at trying to sow division in the Democratic Party. Right. But you're elevating Warren. You are helping make Warren this sort of unassailable arbiter of truth and justice that could very easily, boomerang back on Republicans, and she, to take her at her word and how she's been treating things going forward,
Clinton
she
Warren
might well
16.
end up being. Well, I mean, she's obviously not talking that way right now, and she may prove to be a validator of Hillary, saying, look, I said that speech because I was trying to put people like Karl Rove out of business, not because foreign governments, were trying to help poor people around the world through the Clinton Foundation. Right. So I do think they might want to think through what, the ramifications of trying to use Warren as a cudgel might be. Mm-hmm. But look, I mean, Hillary Clinton's been around the bend for a long time. She's got her fingers in a lot of stuff. Anytime you got a paper trail of any sort, that gives you lots of targets, and Republicans are going to try to find their targets. So at this point, early on, you take a shot where you can find it and see where it's going to stick. So I don't blame them for trying. But I don't think it is sort of a clean shot. I think it's more complicated than that.
Fair.
Now you are you're sort of deep in the internet industry, much more so than I am. I may be a blogger in good standing, but I'm sort of a technological Luddite.
Yeah.
And as such, I am unusual amongst liberal bloggers, and I don't really follow the net neutrality debate.
Okay.
I have not prioritized it in my life, but I know lots going on. I know Obama has made a big move post the midterm election to have strict net neutrality be the policy of the FCC. The FCC seems to be taking his cue. And the telecommunications industry and Republicans seem to be trying to push back against this. Do you think there is a risk amongst Republicans taking that stance? Because it seems like a lot of young voters who are into the internet, don't want to see staggered pricing, don't want to see having slow service, so they don't pay extra, absorbent prices, or seeing certain organizations being forced on a slow track and they can't even do, high-speed internet. Where's the advantage for Republicans and conservatives to oppose the president on this?
I really wouldn't want to overstate the importance of this in its electoral terms. I would imagine if you did a poll that asked Americans what their top issues were, and you listed net neutrality in there so people were even aware of it, I don't think it would come out very high. It's really, it's an elite issue. It's one that people who follow technology care about. It's really, and I'm, so a little bit of a backup here. Like, I've worked on this issue in the past, and to this day, right now, I have actually clients who sit on either side of the divide. Although I don't work on that issue myself. It's not something we're working on. So anything I say here is purely just what I think about it. But look, I am somebody who is somewhat skeptical of the push over the last few years to introduce rules around net neutrality. I've always kind of seen it as a solution in search of a problem. Like, I get the theoretical danger of having an ISP or one of the large providers, play favorites and say, slow down Netflix in favor of their own program, their own programming. I mean, so far we really haven't seen that, and there have been, at best, a handful of cases where someone's tried something, they've got shamed, and the situation has moved on. I do think that the larger issue here is that we don't have the kind of competition in broadband that we would like. I don't see this as actually the rules that the FCC are talking about right now aren't going to fix that. So I'm kind of, in a way, I'm personally kind of indifferent on these changes. And so you alluded to them, but what's happening right now is Tom Wheeler, who's the chairman of the FCC, 2 weeks ago, he announced his outlined solution for what new net neutrality rules he wanted to put in place on both wired broadband and, I think this is interesting, mobile broadband as well. The lack of competition is really a problem in, the wireline internet, because it costs a lot of money to lay new fiber, and new copper isn't really going in at all. In mobile, there's a lot more competition. So I I think Wheeler went a little bit overboard in including mobile there. What's happened actually, since he announced those rules, and basically Republicans kind of gave up the fight. You were asking Republicans opposing Obama on this. John Thune, who is the key chairman in this, has said that they're not getting a bill done about net neutrality without Democrats. So I don't really see them fighting. I was at a dinner here in Washington last week and talking to somebody on the telecom side of the issue, and I said, so what's next? And he said litigation. So they're resigned to this going forward right now. But there are reasons. I'm monologuing here, so I want to kick it back to you in a moment. I think there are some real reasons to be skeptical that this is going to do anything. It's not going to solve anything. I do think that there are some trade-offs in terms of future investment, or maybe metered usage of the internet that we haven't really thought through yet. So I think that the unintended consequences of the regulation, may be something to be watching for in the years ahead.
Well, it sounds like, just to take what you're saying at face value, right. You could do this. Yeah. It might.
They're going to. They're going to.
Might not change anything. It might not make things magically better or magically worse.
Right.
But if there are some hiccups along the way, you keep an eye out for them and you adjust your regulations as you go. Is there a serious harm in trying this and seeing how it goes?
So I think you have three ideals that you're looking for when talking about net neutrality. And I'm borrowing this a little bit from a guy named Ben Thompson, who writes an excellent newsletter called Stratechery. These things are, you want more investment in broadband. You want more investment. Obviously, you've heard the line, which is very true, about how the U.S. lags behind Western Europe and East Asia in terms of internet access. Our speeds are much slower down and up. So investment is one. Non-discrimination is another key thing we are looking at, and that's what net neutrality is kind of prioritizing. And the last thing you want is, unlimited access to the internet. Problem is, you can't really have all of them at the same time. By imposing these rules and so what these rules are going to do is they're going to treat broadband as a utility. And along with regulations, comes restrictions that I think are going to have some negative impacts that we're not fully appreciating yet. One of those may be a reduction in investment in developing, in laying more broadband, laying more fiber. Another may be metered usage, actually, which nobody's really talked about at all. Like right now we have tiers where, you can get your standard, I get my home rate at the internet is whatever, $100 a month or more than that. And, a business gets a T1 line that costs a lot more. But it may be that the more internet you use, the more it costs. And people don't really want that. But it really may be, as the costs go up for the companies that are offering a service, they'll respond by, like when you raise the minimum wage, you have fewer people working. The same kind of trade-off is going to occur here.
I will give you the last word on that subject. Okay. But before we go, I do want to get your thoughts on the brewing Homeland Security immigration battle. It's fluid, so we run the risk of getting ahead of ourselves. But it looks like House and Senate are not on the same page. They're not going to be able to resolve this before the shutdown date. As a practical matter, the department isn't literally shut down because the vast majority of employees are deemed essential, and so they would still work, but they would get no pay.
Right.
You would lose your non-essential support staff for a period, and things like grants, for example, grants that go to first responders locally for training and preparation and such. That gets frozen. During the dispute. Some of the employers saying, "Look, we don't all make six figures here. If you take away my pay for a few weeks, I might just say, look, this job's not worth it. I might quit." Obviously the Republican leadership which has had a very anti-shutdown message for several weeks now, would rather this not be occurring, and they're worried what the political ramifications are.
It should be.
And they say, and they're trying as an escape hatch, saying, "Look, we have this court ruling that we won. We won on the courts. And why don't we just let the court thing play out? Because that's got a better chance of succeeding than this is. So let's just, keep our powder dry and let the courts handle it." And then you have on the Tea Party side say, we got to fight this to the bitter end. The court case gives us moral standing to fight Obama on this. And we shut down the government last time and everything worked out okay. So why let's not get all uptight about having another shutdown? We can spin this in our favor. Do you have a strong sense of what Beltway conservatives think about this friction?
So here's where I'm going to admit that, like you on net neutrality, me on Congress, I don't follow Congress as closely, but I've been reading up on this for the purposes of this conversation. Beltway conservatives specifically, okay, if we're going to take them as being the establishment, I think it's generally a sense of, I think like in general, a lot of times you can always be safe in saying that establishment or Beltway conservatives have a sense of, I don't know if it's resignation or just, rolling their eyes every time something tries to get done. Basically, Keystone Cops might be going too far, but I do think that McConnell is doing himself no favors by swinging one way and then coming back toward the other direction. It doesn't look very strategic, let alone principled. It doesn't look strategic at all. I do think that Boehner is probably breathing a bit of a sigh of relief right now that McConnell is the one who is bearing the brunt of getting outplayed by, at least so far it seems, getting outplayed by the sunglass-wearing, deal-with-it Harry Reid. But I don't know. One reason I don't follow these things is because back when I started out in DC as a political reporter. I mean, I found all this to be tedious, and I found all this to be kind of the same fight over and over again. I don't have a lot of patience for this. Whatever happens, happens. Maybe I don't feel that I have any investment in like how it's going to play out. I mean, do you have a stronger feeling about this than I do?
Well, yeah, I wrote a piece back in September saying, "Good news, Democrats are going to lose." Specifically because I was predicting this exact development. I mean, maybe not this soon. I thought it might happen more later in the year with the other funding bills. This was before they even had the whole omnibus in staggered funding for Homeland Security. But I had predicted that they're not on the same page within the party, how to proceed strategically. If they tried to pass things with poison pills, decided to get Obama's vetoes, and he kicked it back to the Republicans, that they were going to break apart on what was the pragmatic thing to do at that juncture. And they created their own mess by having, by saying in December, this is how we'll exert leverage over Obama. We'll threaten not to fund Homeland Security. That will stick it to him. Yeah. Which was just, it was a bizarre concept in the first place because all the leverage, all the pressure is on them, not on Obama. And so you have a party that ran in the midterms saying that the Democratic control was not getting things done. Mm-hmm. And they were going to get things done. And they're not in there for less than 2 months before they're failing to fund a critical government agency. I just think that, it's very plausible that the shutdown wouldn't last very long. And people forget, like the October 13th shutdown, people forget things over the course of time. I think so long as you do things not to remind them of your past mistakes, you can get away with some mistakes. But if it starts becoming a pattern of behavior, I think that's got to be a real threat to the party's brand of governmental competence. And if they lose that, that's already pretty weakened after the George Bush presidency. Yeah,
I was going to say, I do agree that Republicans would like to run on competence, but I think that has been a real problem in the last decade. Heck of a job, Brownie didn't become a catchphrase for no reason,
And so what are the Republican presidential candidates do? I mean, someone's going to ask Scott Walker or Jeb Bush or Marco Rubio. I mean, if you're in the Senate, if you're Marco Rubio or Rand Paul or Ted Cruz, you're going to ask, what do you think about this? Is this how government should work? What do you think about your party being the reason for this? And I just think that's got to be a very awkward conversation for those candidates to have.
Chalk up another advantage to Scott Walker, at least over Rubio and Rand Paul and Ted Cruz, that
he's outside, but is he going to scold his own party for this? Is he going to blame Washington Republicans for failing to do Homeland Security? Wouldn't that put him at odds with the base who want the fight?
Oh, I think you can. I think if I'm Scott Walker, I can separate these things. I think he could, in theory, and I'm just sort of thinking out loud here, he could, in theory, side with the base on wanting to say, shut down Obama's immigration action, and I don't know. I'm not all that well versed in what's up with DHS. I just know that's kind of caught in the middle.
I guess he could,
but what he could do is
he's trying to blame Washington writ large and not blame Republicans.
Is there anything lost for Scott Walker in going after Washington? I don't think so. That's pretty standard play, and he's in a good position to make it. So is Jeb, but he has fewer advantages, of course.
Right. Maybe the trouble with Washington is its functional card, but it just seems like that implicitly says that Washington Republicans fail to make Washington work. So they wouldn't say put that in their own mouths, but I think I find it hard to separate.
Yeah, it's interesting. It'd be an interesting gauntlet to run. But Republicans are looking for change. They're looking for. Hey, this could be the change election for Republicans. Sort of one of the things that Hillary being Obama's third term is probably a phrase you're going to hear from Republicans coming up. And whenever you're in that position, you work with the situation as it's dealt to you. And in this case, Republicans will want somebody who can represent a change of pace at the very least. And Walker's in the best position to make that particular argument, I believe.
Well, I'll give you the last word on that, sir.
Thank you.
Always good to talk to you. Nice to have you back. Where can folks find your work?
Oh, on the Twitters, I am at William Beutler. You should come on over to BeutlerInc.com. That's ink with a K, and see some of the fine infographic and visual design work that we were doing. And that's pretty good. How about you, Bill? I know people know, but you should plug yourself again.
Twitter at Bill Scher, BILSCHER, blogging at Campaign for America's Future, ourfuture.org, and now contributing editor of Politico magazine from time to time, and also contributing to Real Clear Politics at realclearpolitics.com. So lots of places to find my scribbles.
Excellent. Well, thanks for having me back.
Hope we can talk again soon. Take care.
Bye-bye.